Hi, and welcome to Top Dice. My name's Aid, and I've got today with me Chris, who is quite big on the in the industry. Conan, that's the latest one from yourself, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, I'm currently working with Monolith as the line manager for the Conan the Hyborian Age roleplay game, which is just finished on Kickstarter.
And very successfully too, I believe.
Yeah, we're really happy with the success. I was previously involved for a while for the tail end of the Conan line with Modiphius as well. Um, and when you move from one edition to another edition, especially when you change publisher in the process, there's always a little bit of apprehension as to how well it's going to be received, but it's been received very positively. It's a very different take compared to previous games, and it seems to have been widely embraced by the lovers of the IP out there. So yeah, we're really happy with how that campaign went.
Well, it certainly looks very good. I have the quick start that reads very well too. I actually went and actually got it printed out the quick start
Nice.
because I work better from paper. Unfortunately, I'm a bit of a dinosaur on that side, so I work
You
better
and
on
me
paper.
both.
And
Yeah.
I'm looking at electronic documents most of the day. So for me, the glory is picking up a book. But also, the other question is who is Chris Shepperson? Tell me. So where else have you been? What have you done?
Sure. Yeah, I am a project manager by trade, I guess. But I moved into the tabletop industry about 10 years ago as a freelance writer and games designer. I worked on a couple of board games, but eventually kind of stumbled into writing RPGs. That's where my flair was, and I worked on very heavily at the tail end of SLA Industries first edition, and then took that into second edition with the guys at Nightfall Games. I worked on a couple of projects for Red Scar as a writer at the Kings of War RPG, which unfortunately never happened. It kind of went dead in the water. Um, but yeah, and then eventually I moved on to some bigger IPs, worked on Infinity for Modiphius. And then before long, people cottoned on to the fact that my background was project management and being a relatively sought after skill set in the tabletop industry. It didn't take long for me to fall into to moving from creative into more business orientated stuff, which I did for Modiphius for quite a while. Ran a number of lines for them, Conan, Acton Cthulhu, Dune, um, and I had a very brief stint at Steamforged where I worked on the local legends project that came out on Kickstarter, the sort of pub crawl for D&D.
Yeah.
And then about 18 months ago or so, I went freelance as a project manager. I had a couple of companies asking me to help them bring their games to market, mainly board game publishers who wanted to break into the RPG industry. And there was a few opportunities for me there. Um, and I worked with a couple of people over the last year and a half, and then eventually just made really good friends at Monolith, and I've been working with them ever since, line managing. So yeah, I mean that's my life in games. Outside of that, I'm a family man, got three kids, play a lot of board games, do a bit of jiu-jitsu, play a bit of bass guitar. Pretty much me, summed up pretty well.
That sums it up very, very well. That the well, going back to Monolith, let's stick with that for a while. Now they've invested quite heavily, haven't they, in Robert E. Howard's works. Basically, we've got Solomon Kane. They've picked up that, I think, haven't they, as well?
Yeah, I mean, Monolith have got a long history with it because of the Conan miniatures board
Yeah,
game, which is the biggest selling Conan tabletop game, certainly in terms of turnover that I think's ever been published. Hundreds and hundreds of amazing miniatures of the
oh
characters and
yes,
the creatures that Howard created. What, 4, 5 big box expansions, and it's an incredibly good game, very well received game. So they were an obvious choice for Heroic Signatures to move other Howard licensed gaming items to. Um, so then picking up the Conan license after it expired with Modiphius was a really good move. But also, like you said, they picked up the Solomon Kane board game and the sort of Savage Worlds implementation of that RPG from I think it was Mythic Games that did that originally. Um, and I mean, I wouldn't say other things are off the table either. They've got a great relationship with Heroic. They do a lot of justice to it. They throw the right kind of money at making the product right, which is really refreshing. For a project manager to have the budget to make a great game that looks right. And when you're dealing with something like Conan or Solomon Kane, the aesthetic is incredibly important. You
Very.
can't go down a generic sword and sorcery route. Things have to be right. So to have the capacity to do that is brilliant. But yeah, I mean, Monolith, they've got a deep root. Frederick Henry, who's sort of the head of the company, he's a ginormous Conan fan, and he was the original designer behind the board game, and it's in his blood. It's in the blood of the company, really. The Conan board game pretty much launched
Yeah.
Monolith, and so for them to be now releasing a new game, is really exciting, and I'm really excited to be along for the ride. Like I said before, especially considering I managed the tail end of the Modiphius line. I put a lot of love into the last four books with Modiphius. I was quite sad to end my quest into the Hyborian age, and so it's nice to venture forth once again. It's pretty exciting.
I take it it's quite a different ball game from the Modiphius side of way they do business now working with Monolith and how they look at it.
Yeah, I mean, from a project management perspective, it's very, very different. Um, uh, Modiphius are a great company, and there's some great people there. I've got a lot
Yeah.
of great
Oh,
friends
yeah.
there, a lot of respect for them, giving me my leg up into full-time work in the games industry as well. In terms of company structure, they're a much more sort of corporate affair. They're a much bigger company with many more employees. Monolith have been very successful with a lot of games, but they are much more of a sort of grassroots operation. It's a few key people making key decisions and getting on with it. Um, and the big difference, of course, is that Modiphius is very much a retail and distribution style operation,
Yeah.
while they still use Kickstarter, whereas Monolith are very much a Kickstarter publisher. Things do trickle into retail. You can buy it from their web store, but their primary focus is Kickstarter. Great Kickstarter, get great products, and if there's demand, we do a Kickstarter for a reprint. Like they're not focused on the retail side. So the planning and plotting that goes into a project is a little different.
Yes.
You aren't looking necessarily at the longevity of a line in the same way that you would be if you were building a line for retail. The upfront offering is just as important, but where you go from there is a little different.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but they're a great small team based out of Paris, France, and thankfully they speak better English than I speak French, which is always helpful. Um, but yeah, great team, great people to work with, some very talented folk in there, and yeah, it's really fun to be involved.
Well, the Conan board game, well, board game, war game, whatever you want to call it. So I've gone and picked that up. Being a Conan fan myself, the quality of what's in there, I must say, is just superb. Absolutely superb. And with the latest Kickstarter, yeah, I've got the models, but I've still gone all in anyway, just because of the sheer quality of the plastic that they actually sort of turn out. So whoever they've got designing these things, they've got it absolutely spot on. You take a look at a miniature and you can sort of say, yeah, that comes from Conan. Um, I've picked up now. It was obviously another company I think that designed the Solomon Kane board game originally, again with
It
the
was,
stack
yeah.
model. Yeah, I picked that up. Again, I ended up going all in, and so glad I did. I just hope we see more actually of those going forward as well from Monolith because what a great idea. And again, the boards that you play on, the artwork on them, it's just
Mm.
it it's Solomon Kane, it's Conan. You can actually sort of tell it just absolute quality and the rule books, artwork, and I'll say the same about the quick start as well. The artwork in the quick starts that you've issued for Conan. Not wanting to sound much of a fanboy, but it is top quality, superb. I'd say it's actually even better than the Modipus version, the layout and the way it's actually sort of done. Rules,
That's really, really kind. Yeah, really good of you
yeah,
to say. I know that Nadej, who's the layout artist that worked on the Monolith one, will be overjoyed to hear that. Like it's the people behind the scenes. Like it's very easy to show off a piece of art. People go, "Who's the artist?"
yeah,
And it's the same with writers. People want to know who's written a book, who's drawn the pictures. The people behind the scene that do the graphic design, that do the layout of the book, that like those people don't really get they're not the rock stars of the industry, right? They
no,
don't get the initial recognition. And when people pick up on those things, like it's a huge compliment to those members of the team. So, I really appreciate you calling that out.
it's well everything about the quick start. And if you haven't picked the quick start up, I'll actually put the link in the description of this video that we're going to be doing today. Um, Click on it, get it downloaded, have a read. The rules themselves, obviously, you're not the games designer. I'll just touch on it. It's got some really interesting aspects to it. The flex dice, I think that really does strike home, and it just creates, I don't know, it makes it feel like sword and sorcery. As daft as it may be, that one rule really does
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
seem to add to it. I would love to see a Solomon Kane role playing him. Now, I know we've got the Savage Worlds one. Savage Worlds is fine, but again, it captures Robert E. Howard's style of writing, I think, so very, very well. But we'll see where this line actually goes. Now, obviously, there's the Kickstarter out there. People can still chip into the Kickstarter even though it's finished. Is that going to be possible?
yeah. They can right now. Since I think about a month ago, Kickstarter has enabled late pledging on that platform, so you don't have to wait for a pledge manager to open. So you can go over to the campaign, even though it's closed down, you can still grab one of the pledges, and that will continue until it migrates to the pledge manager for us to start, collecting shipping addresses and postage and that kind of thing. Um, so you've still got a couple of months to get in on it.
Right. Well,
I
do so.
think everything's
Just
available. So
do
yeah,
it. That's all I'm going to sort of say. Again, what I will do, I'll stick the Kickstarter link actually in the description as well as the quick start, and take a look on there. The quality is superb, and you'll be able to see from the video that so many people don't actually watch the videos of these Kickstarters, etc. But do watch the video, have a read of it, and if you haven't committed already, then do think strongly about doing so because it's keeping a smaller company going is this, and also the line is brilliant. I'm really looking forward to giving it a shot. I'm going to be giving the play test an outing in the next couple of weeks, so I'm looking forward to that. But I've already got my head around the rules, I think, as far as I can gather, and I'm looking forward to the actual main rule book when that comes out as well because it'll have all the extra bells and whistles. And I just look forward to creating some. I just love creating characters, so
who
that
doesn't?
some of the ones you've got in here, there's five, I think, in the back of this one. There's one really mad old guy who just you'll see it yourself anyway. I'm not going to
Yeah,
spoil that. Pick it up, have a read, and the descriptions are just there, and you can imagine these player characters wandering around the world of Conan. Um, so yeah, bring that on very definitely. Is there anything further on the Conan side that you can talk about? Is there more coming on that front?
yeah. Well, I've been. I can't confirm exactly what, but I've been involved in a number of conversations over the last couple of weeks, and since the Kickstarter closed about what the future of that line looks like. Obviously, our main focus is delivering the books that we've
Brill.
that we've
Yeah.
promised, which and I'll go back to in a moment. But basically, one thing that is really nice about Monolith's approach these days is basically we don't go to Kickstarter until our books are basically pretty much print ready. So when this project went to Kickstarter, aside stretch goals that were to be unlocked, everything was written, edited, laid out, proofed, complete. So we are now literally just doing that last sort of like 10% of work that comes from the stretch goals, and refining those. So the weight that you get compared to the traditional method of like having a half finished product going to Kickstarter, finishing it off is way shorter. Having lots of things like miniatures can drag that out a little bit, but inevitably what we're looking at is going to print not too far into the new year, and then hopefully
Brilliant.
fulfilling a little bit later. So, but we have been involved in a couple of conversations over the last week or so about what's next. When we wrote the core book and the two adventure supplements that are available on Kickstarter, myself and Matt John, who was the rules lead, Matt's got a deep history in both Howard and sword and sorcery in general. He's a published fiction author in that, and he's worked recently a little bit on some of the Conan comic books, and Conan is in his blood. And we probably between us plotted out what we'd like the first 4 or 5 source books for this game to look like. It's very fair to say that we didn't jam everything into the core book in mind that we would be continuing a line. We didn't want to just give you everything and then go, wow, what the hell do we do next? Modifius managed 19 books out of that line.
Yeah.
Mongoose like 430 or something ridiculous. And
Yes.
so the fact is that there's a lot of content we'd like to cover, and our initial offering was designed to give you a little bit of everything without going too far. And there are things that we definitely want to do, and I know that Monolith are seeming very committed to doing those things. So um, I believe it's fair for me to say that you will see a continuation of this line, and you'll be hearing about that very soon. And I think people will be pretty excited by the direction that we'll be taking for the first new offering. But for now, we just want people to enjoy the core book. We want people
Yeah.
to check out. I mean, we've written between the core book and the two adventure supplements, there's like 20 scenarios available in the initial offering. It's a lot of
Wow.
adventure
Yeah.
content for an upfront thing. With the game being based on this, like, you know, lots of short, punchy adventures that last 1 or 2 sessions, much like the fiction that Howard wrote about Conan, like we aren't talking about 500-page marathons. We're talking about short, sharp, exciting adventures. And that was the approach that we took for this initial offering. So you can grab any one of, I think there's I think there's 18 adventures between the two adventure supplements. You can grab any one of those. The prep time for a GM is like 3 minutes. Read the opening paragraph. As long as you know the rules, get going. Like it just start. Tells you where the read alouds are, tells you the story points. Like it's really quick to get into, and you can just go, what do you want? Do you want to go delving for something? You want to hit the desert? So you're looking for something like high octane, pick the right thing and go. And we've even put a little difficulty scale on each adventure in terms of complexity for the games master, rather than how difficult is it to get to the end. So everything has a little 1, 2, or 3 little crows next to the title, and they're like, if it's a 1 crow, it's like a perfect one shot. The 2 crow, it's 1 or 2 sessions. There might be a little bit of GM improv or guidance to throw in your own ideas for things. And then if it's a 3 crow, it's a bit more involved, numbers to track. Maybe there's a mass combat where you have to talk about some regiments, that kind of thing. So the GM can easily find something that
Real.
appeals to their style or what they want on a given day. So yeah, there's loads of content up front, which we really want people to focus. But yeah,
Bring it
there'll
on.
be more. There'll be more.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, again, I know that Oedipus did touched on Cull. Hopefully, that will be another great angle, and maybe a bit of Red Sonja. There's loads there that you could actually sort of call on and
Loads.
use. The
Yeah.
number of stories that he wrote and extracts that he never finished as well. Quite a prolific author all around, and that's just a fraction of what he did as Conan. Um, but it's looking very, very rosy. The game is looking really, really good. So put that to bed for now. And also, you've got another thing that you actually do yourself your own little baby, the Gaia project.
Oh yeah, the Gaia Complex. Yeah.
Complex, sorry. Sorry, I've
Yeah. No,
got
no
I'm
worries. The Gaia project is a board game, and you wouldn't be the first person to confuse the two IPs. So yeah, I have people come to me. I really love the Gaia project. Great game, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't make that. So that happens
I
more
knew
than
what I
once.
meant anyway. I'm not
Yeah,
going to
so
edit this out. I'll leave it in. I'll look
yeah,
like an idiot. I don't mind.
yeah, I run I run a small publishing company called Hansa Publishing. However, to call it a publishing company is probably unfair. It's just a name under which to release my own little passion projects. Um, Something I've been doing for many years now, just working on little projects and games on the side. But the one that I guess it had a little bit of note is the Gaia Complex. So I published the core book. I have a copy off the shelf here.
Fantastic.
A couple of years ago, and on Kickstarter. So this is the Gaia Complex, and this was published a couple of years ago on Kickstarter, and then a year later we came back and we successfully published Hardware 2119, and then last year and it's shipped out to backers a couple of months ago. We completed Evolution by Design, so we've got those on a GM screen. So it's for a little one man band, and and this is literally like other than a few sections. I wrote the whole book, I did all the layout, and then one artist did all the art in it. We kind of have a little partnership on it. A guy called Jesus Blones. He's a highly sought after tattoo artist from Connecticut in the US, and that's his passion project on the side. When he's not scratching people's skin, he's drawing pictures for this. And when I'm not making games for Monolith, I'm writing words for this. And yeah, I'm really really proud of it. It's my world, and it's a game that is written in a very different way to everything else I've ever written, and that is that I write that game for me. The what other people want and ask for really gets acknowledged. It's written completely selfishly, and I am just lucky that some other people also quite like it. And that is pretty much the approach I take with it. A lot of people go, have you thought about putting this in there? And I'm like, no, so it won't go in there. And
As project
uh,
manager, I say no.
yeah, I mean, it's basically like me writing the perfect game for me.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very dark cyberpunk setting that combines a dystopian Europe with the plague of vampirism. Okay, so it's Blade meets Blade Runner in France and Germany, pretty much is what it is.
That kind of sums it
Um,
up very well, actually. Yeah.
yeah, and it's very dark. It's written with the adult reader in mind. It holds no bars. Um, the black markets of this world is human trafficking for vampires to use as a blood source. It's uh, street generated narcotics that like twist people's very being. It's very very dark, um, uh, but it's managed to get like it's got a small following. We've sold about 1,000 books since it was released, which for any indie RPG is fine. We've managed to successfully fund and fulfill 3 Kickstarters without bankrupting ourselves, which for
Good.
any RPG
Yep.
is pretty good going.
Yep.
We haven't made a lot of money, but we're still going. And every word in there is just pure love. I love making it, and yeah, and I hope to continue doing so for a long time alongside my other things. It's never going to be a project that is a it's never going to be a commercially viable product, but as long as it makes enough to keep me and Jesus interested in developing that world, we're just going to keep making it. We've got a little Discord server with some very passionate players on there, like probably about 100 people on the Discord that really love the game. And we're just really fortunate. I mean, honestly, if I got to make these books that look this great and people like go onto one person's coffee table, I'd be happy. So yeah, it's great. Anyone that's interested, you can find the Hansa Publishing website again. You can find the links put in the thingy. You can pick up books from a few
Yeah.
retailers, and you can get them direct. We're planning another Kickstarter for next year, where there'll be the opportunity to pick everything up again. And everything is on Drive through RPGs in PDF format as well. But obviously, you should just buy the books because books are
The books are
beautiful.
nicer. The books are
Um,
so much nicer.
yeah, yeah. One thing that I'm really proud of is the quality of those. So even though we're really small and we're working on a very, very tight budget, they're printed to absolute top quality. They're printed in the same place that Modiphius and Free League print their books to the same standards, same paper stock. I know that to be a fact because I used to get those books printed when I when I worked at Modiphius. So
Yeah.
we spare no expense in making absolute top quality print product. And Jesus's artwork is incredible and vibrant, and I'm really honored to be able to work with him. And that like even though now he's completely moved away from game illustration to full time tattooing, that he still wants to keep making this stuff for this game and developing this world. I've got a lot of respect for the guy. So yeah, it's really fun. Of all the little projects and books that I've put out, I try and do like February Games Writing Month and things like that, Kickstarter, Zine Quest, and bits and pieces. The Gaia Complex is my mainstay, and
That's the one.
it's my baby. Yeah, it's my baby. One day maybe it'll sell more than a couple of hundred books on a Kickstarter, but for now I'm really happy with
Well,
how it goes. And
it's strange how these things actually go. It only takes one person in a different area to sort of take some interest, and all of a sudden you've got a movie coming out. So,
I mean, absolutely.
stranger things have actually happened.
What one thing when I actually wrote this book is it's quite heavy on the fiction. So each of the books has an underpinning meta plot, and that's told through episodic fiction at the start of every chapter. And it tells a story. And between each book is the passing of a year in the setting. So you find out what happened a year later, and you go on, and characters enter and characters leave.
Yeah.
And I've written that fiction, the backbone to the game, the meta plot to the game, which is pretty wild. I've written that in my brain. It was almost always like a Netflix series. Like each piece of fiction is another episode of a Netflix series, and I've always, in the back of my mind, I've always had this like, one day. I mean, it's never now, like, but you look at things like Altered Carbon. There's a great
Yeah.
season one was a great series at least, and the way that was presented was fantastic. And in my mind, those kind of things inspired elements of the Gaia complex. Um, and that approach to telling those stories is really appealing to me. Like that would be a dream one day to see it as a Netflix series. Everybody should have dreams, right?
You
It's all
you
right to
you've got
to
to.
keep it.
You've got to. You must keep it there. And like I said, who knows? It just takes one person to see something and go, "Hey, yeah, I like that." Have a word to someone else, and all of a sudden, there's offers floating around for this, that, and the other. So, fingers crossed for you on that one. Different
Nice.
question now. Top three role-playing games that you've not worked on.
Oh wow.
Now, there you go. You weren't
Okay.
expecting that.
No, it's good. I like it. Of all time, so there's a lot of modern games that have had a lot of play out of me recently because they're relatively new and people are
Yeah.
excited by them. But for my favorite games of all time, I'm probably going back a little bit further. That I've not worked on. I mean, I would have, had I not ended up being pulled into SLA Industries, that absolutely would have been there because I got involved in SLA Industries on the very last book of um, first edition. Maybe that would have been, I don't know, like 7 years ago now. But
Must
I
be.
played SLA Industries to death as a teenager. Like, so being able to work on it as an adult was a dream come true. But um, I'm going to drop that off my list of three for different reasons. So, number one got to be Cyberpunk 2020. It like obviously I can make a Cyberpunk game today. There's no way I was not inspired by that game. Mike
Yes.
Pondsmith's world. The guy's a legend. Cyberpunk Red hasn't really rung the same bells for me. But Cyberpunk 2020, I've got a full collection on the shelf over here. There's 76 books in the set, and I just love it.
Legend,
No, the old black
absolute
and white
classic.
line
Yeah,
work, it's just amazing. So Cyberpunk 2020 is a must-have. Definitely inspired me in many ways, got me obsessed with the cyberpunk genre, something I'm still obsessed with. So yeah, absolutely. Number two, Conspiracy X, first
interesting.
edition.
Yeah,
Um, there are, I at the time I got into it, I was a big X-Files fan. I'm not
yeah,
really into the X-Files these days, but it stuck with me from a nostalgia standpoint. There was a few things that that system did that I really loved and never really got to experience again in other games, like in character creation, where you have to pool all your resources when you buy equipment. If you want a laptop, you've got to buy like a case of 6 laptops, and you have to negotiate with each other to buy all the gear that the whole team needs at the start of the game. There's little things that were just
yeah,
really cool. And it was just so easy to just take any episode of the X Files and turn it into a game, like it was a games master's dream.
yes.
So that was brilliant. Can I have four rather than three?
Go on. We'll let you have four because it's you.
Awesome.
There you
Okay,
go.
next one's In Nominee. Just stunningly dark, angels and demons walking on men, very satirical. Like it's like Constantine with a bit of humor behind it. I had some serious laughs with that when I was a teenager, and today I'm like still really excited by those books. I'm disappointed that I can't read French because I understand the game it was based on was much, much
I
darker than the
believe it
version we
was
got in the
quite, yeah,
UK. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of that setting. Then my fourth one is slightly newer, and that would be the One Ring first edition from Cubicle 7.
yeah,
There's a couple of reasons I choose that over the new One Ring. Firstly, Johnny Hodgson's artwork and art direction of that line
yeah,
was very Tolkien, and like the new one, as much as the art is beautiful, is a bit too much generic fantasy for me.
yes,
That Johnny's work on that line was just something else. I secondly, from a mechanical perspective and the way that they implemented the dice work, like it felt really new and fresh. It was stronger than any other Lord of the Rings based thing that had come before it, and it felt fitting. Like the emphasis on sort of song and poem, and like they just really invested themselves in the world. And the source book range was brilliant. Like none of those books a week. And that's really rare for a line that produces, 12, 13, 14 books or however many they ended up being for that range. To have every book be as strong as the last is really, really special. So I've got a lot of love for that line. Um, I ran a campaign of it recently using the maps and miniatures from the Journeys in Middle Earth board game, which is like the sort of narrative game that you play with an iPad to run the game. But those two things together, it was just it's just a phenomenal experience. So I've had a lot of very, very strong recent sort of powerful gameplay out of that game. So it's in my mind, even though it's a little newer than those others. But yeah, I mean, I'm rooted in RPGs from the 90s, really. But
some
um,
good, really, really good choice. It was good to hear in nominee there.
yeah,
Uh, Conspiracy X, that was a bit of a shocker to me because that's such a minority game, or it was. And the system for that again was absolutely excellent. I'd say almost breaking back in the day, and also it was cross compatible as well with other games that they actually released, which just sort of added to
yeah,
it for me. Uh, yep, Cyberpunk 2020. Not too much of a shocker based on the conversation we'd actually sort of had that.
yeah,
Amazing. And yeah, just Mike Pondsmith just hit it right time. I remember when the game originally, the first edition came out, and it was like, what is this? And the line artwork, as you sort of said, that really sort of brings it home. And yep, I've got Cyberpunk Red sat on my shelf. It's good, but there was something about playing that in the 90s that just was absolutely spot on. So yeah, I can go with that. Okay then.
well,
Top three games that you've actually had a hand in writing. Now that's going to be all probably more well involved with, shall we say, not just right, involved with. Now, obviously, I'm
Okay.
guessing that. Well, I'm going to shut up. Let you actually sort of tell me. No
Sure.
specific order. No, don't you don't need to
Okay.
give the
Well,
order.
I
Just
mean, I didn't know that question was coming, so we'll use SLA Industries
right.
as the first option. Um, other than Cyberpunk 2020, SLA Industries dominated my teenage years. Like every weekend we'd play 2 days straight. Summer holidays between school, we'd just play days on end. Like role playing as a teenager for me was just everything. When I was sort of 15, 16, 17, we just lost ourselves to just ridiculous storylines. And Slay Industries was a bit of an obsession. So, to all intents and purposes, that game kind of was laid to rest at one point or went very, very dormant. But then when they, geared up towards the end of first edition again to do the Cannibal Sector 1 book, and I was doing some work with Mark Rapson at WordForge Games, who's a absolutely amazing guy. A lot of respect for him. In fact, a lot of what I know about making money and having a business in the games industry has come from Mark, and he was getting involved with Nightfall. He's exceptionally good at turning around problem projects, and Nightfall ran into a problem with their Kickstarter. They were working with a company called Daruma who went bust, and the money disappeared, and things were problematic. And Mark stepped in and helped build Nightfall up to what it is today. Still making Slay Industries. They got Terminator, loads of
Yeah.
other bits and pieces. Um, and I was along for that ride to start with, and I did the rules development on Slay Industries second edition, and it was an absolute dream come true. Mark and Dave and Jared and now Ben Greybeaton, who's also an ex Modificer. Great team, great guys, amazing game, like one of the all-time British greats of role playing. And
Great.
I
Yeah.
love it. I'm really honoured to have been involved in a couple of books for that line. Number, I mean, I have to say Conan. Um, Obviously, we've talked a lot about the new Conan. But so I'm just going to call out a specific book from the Modifius era. Towards the end of that line, I managed to approach Jason Doral, really respected writer in the tabletop space, particularly in Howard circles. And he had originally written a load of material for Mongoose, and he'd written an amazing campaign that never got published called Shadow of the Sorcerer. And we basically approached him about revisiting it, bringing it into 2D20, finishing it off, and us publishing it as a long form campaign with all new artwork and new maps and doing it all. And he agreed, and it was a real honor to be able to bring that campaign. I think there was only one book that came after it in the line, and I like to feel like we ended Conan on a high for 2D20 because the Shadow of the Sorcerer campaign is a truly incredible long form campaign, like one of the best fantasy RPG campaigns I've ever read. So I was involved in that as a line manager, and I also did some of the editing on that book. So I wasn't in there as a creative to begin with, but being involved in it was a joy. It was really really good, really important to me and my journey with Conan. Um, Number three, oh, I'm just looking at my shelf of stuff that
That's
I've done. I oh man, I've worked on so many little bits and pieces, but I guess it's a bit of an odd pick. But I would probably say the Hypercorpse book for Infinity for 2D20 as well. Now, there are other games that I've been involved in over the years that like probably made more of an impact. And I imagine the amount of people who even bought that book were pretty small. But Hypercorpse was the first book that I got a proper writer's gig on as an RPG writer in the games industry. So, in terms of a pride, like that book was the thing that,
yeah.
like, a big publisher said, we want to pay you money to write 10,000 words for this chapter. And I like Infinity as a war game. I'm into the lore, I'm into the setting. It was a bit of a joy to work on. Um, and I got to make up some stuff that wasn't part of Corvus Belli's IP and then approve it, which I understood at the time was quite rare. Like they read it and went, that's cool, we want that in the world. Um, so, and it was nice for me because it was like almost cyberpunk, and I'd always wanted to, I wrote on that before I touched the Gaia Complex. Um, like it's kind of high sci-fi with the cyberpunk backbone. Um, so yeah, that was really it was really exciting for me to get my first published book out there. So I guess that holds a bit of a special place in my heart, that book.
Definitely. Yeah, I think your first one really does strike home, and it's the same for myself. And I think most people have been involved in writing that your first one that sees print like that really does sort of strike home. Well, that's
Mm.
some very different books there that you've covered in games. I'd just like to thank you very much for talking to me today, and hopefully you'll come back and discuss another project with us in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for inviting me to come on. I think we were saying before the call, writers and games designers and artists often get a shout out, often wanted, but the people like project managers and layout artists and stuff, we're not the first person people want to chat to about, what's happening. They want to speak to the rock stars, right? So it's really nice. I'm really honored. Thank you so much for having me on
Yeah.
and having a chat about stuff. And I would love to come back. I can say that I'm working on something else for Monolith that I think will be of great interest to you and to people watching. At this point in time, NDA means it can't be talked about. But once that changes, it'd be great to come back and give you a little preview and a little insight to what's coming up.
Brilliant. Anytime, just give me a nudge on that side. Thank you very much. And the thing is, the rock stars wouldn't be the rock stars without you. So there you go.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yeah, definitely. And you tell them that we said that as well. So when they get on their high horse and it's like I'm an artist, well, yeah, you might be, but without me, you wouldn't be. There you go. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Oh, thank you.
Right. See you soon. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.